Game 1 of High Frontier came to a really exciting end that I really completely failed to get on camera, unfortunately. It looked like it was going to be a cakewalk. It looked like it was a procession with the People's Republic of China. I've taken everything down. The People's Republic of China had 2 factories and one of these glory sites, so they had 15 points. The European Space Agency had 12, and with 2 factories each, and the NASA and the UN had a factory each, so there were 6 factories on the board. They only had 4 points each. There was 1 factory left to go. It looked like China, who had a claim out here on this place here, were just going to slowly get what they needed. They had a Robonaut on there. They were just going to slowly fly out there, drop a factory in, a refinery in, create the factory, score another 8 points because no one had an M class, and that was going to be it. And while that was slowly proceeding, NASA flew a flight out round over here and just dropped a Robonaut in onto this asteroid here, Khufu, and successfully got a claim on here. Managed to roll a 1 on a d6. They had 2 goes because they had a buggy. Rolled a 1. Got a claim on that site, and then managed to get back round here to Earth and swing back round and drop a refinery on there, and actually industrialised this a turn ahead of the Chinese getting out into the asteroids over here to create their own 3rd factory. And so that boosted NASA up onto 9 points, but more importantly, it devalued one of the Chinese factories from 8 points to 5, and that meant they only had 12 points, and they were therefore tied with the Europeans, who also had 12 points, and the Europeans had more water. So the Europeans won the game, although they barely participated in the last 8 turns or so. NASA just flew around here, and I didn't even know what the points were going to turn out, but NASA was determined not to come last, and so was trying to score some points. The UN had flown out here and actually managed to put a claim on this comet, again with a roll of a 1, and were trying to get their crew back off because it was a science site and they'd got 3 points for that. Anyway, in trying not to come last, the battle between the UN and NASA dropped the Chinese down to 2nd place, where they looked like they'd been coasting. So that was all really, really interesting in terms of the scoring. And it's just prompted me. This game's so good that I've set it up again. I've dealt out 4 player cards in a random order, and we've now got the Shimizu Corporation, who we didn't have before. And we've got the UN as our 2nd player up here, the People's Republic of China as 3rd player here, and NASA as the 4th player, and we haven't got the winner of the last game, the European Space Agency. Shimizu, like the UN, do not have an intrinsic thruster on their crew card, and their special ability is that they can still bid in auctions even when they've got more than 3 cards in their hand. And I may have been doing that slightly wrong, because I was allowing people to bid with more than 3 cards, but I wasn't allowing them to initiate auctions with more than 3 cards. It may be that you can't even bid when you've got more than 3, so I need to check that. But certainly I want to go into this game with some of the stuff that I learnt from the initial game. Certainly there will be a lot more competitive fight over some of these early sites to try and get an early factory, say on Mars, or if it's possible on the Moon. Mercury's substantially more difficult, getting in through all this way with a 10 landing at the end of it. That's quite tricky, but certainly there'll be some early fighting over the Moon and Mars, I expect. But also, as discussed before, the realities of this auction that you can't make money from, and putting a card up for auction yourself has huge cost to it, in terms of it's cost you your action, whereas other people can bid on it without it costing them an action. So you're an action behind, and you're also the opportunity cost of showing all the other players the reverse of the card and the card beneath it that you didn't, information that you didn't have when you started the auction. So you've got to be very, very sure that you're auctioning off something you want, because or that someone else really, really wants, because you've either got to get technology you can really use and know how to use, or you've got to get paid for some of this. If you don't get either of those things, then you're going backwards relative to other people. You're just giving them advantages. So it could well be that, because if none of this looks particularly tempting, then what happens for a while is that people sit around not wanting to be the first one to show everyone else the cards underneath, and they just keep taking water, and then we could have a situation where all the players have got a lot of money, and then suddenly a card gets exposed and you end up with quite a volatile situation. So this may play out quite differently, but I haven't looked at this stuff to see whether it will allow anyone a good initial move. So all that is yet to be done, but really looking forward to getting into this again. And this is just the basic game, so good. So good. The this auctioning mechanism, it's just thought-provoking and really interesting. And then the actual play, the sort of creative problem solving of moving your stuff around the board, trying to create workable missions and trying to solve how you're actually going to make them work, how you're going to get round, that doesn't quite work, how am I going to solve it? Hold on, I could do this. I stop off there and try and refuel, or dump some fuel off halfway through so that I don't have that thrust penalty anymore, and that'll allow me to make it in enough time to go, all that kind of stuff. Really, really fascinating, and like I say, creative, fun, and just super enjoyable when it all falls into place. So yeah, I really, really like my initial encounter with High Frontier, and I'm really, I've liked it that much that I'm just going straight into a second one. Game 2 of High Frontier then, and quite an interesting position has developed. NASA, the white player, was the first to put a claim on Mars, where this red claim is now, but you can see that the Chinese have managed to steal it. Shidaku, the orange player, managed to get a Robonaut with the tractor on to Mars and claim the rest. So they've got 2 claims on Mars. So in response to that, NASA took a different strategy and got this very powerful Robonaut here with an ISRU of 1 and a laser orbital prospecting on it, but it does have mass 5. But anyway, they managed to maneuver that all the way out into this asteroid belt, and from this point here had a go at prospecting everything and have put 3 claims down, and they've now got their Robonaut in here. So they're now planning to develop their own sort of industrial centre in these asteroids in here, which could be a very, very strong position. And finally, our UN player, purple, has not had much luck, but does have a claim now out here at Hertha on this asteroid, and some reasonable technology. If they can get their, if they can get a refinery out there, they'd have reasonable chances of perhaps extending out into these asteroids and developing over there. So that's the best option that they've got, I think, unless they want to completely change tack and try and grab the moon, but they don't, because they haven't got a Robonaut with a low enough ISRU number on it. So that's where we are, with NASA in a very strong position, certainly, and Shidaku looking strong. The Chinese really struggling, but with the most water in the bank, and the UN also struggling, but with lots of water compared to these 2 players. The bidding for technology was pretty aggressive this time around. Once you start getting a feel for, what the numbers are, the stuff can start going for 3 or 4 because you get it all game. You know, it's worth going up another bid. That's the thing. Once you've got a technology, it can't be taken off you. So if there's something you really like the look of, it's worth going for, because even if you bid one more or two more water than you liked, then you get it all game. But that does lead to some really interesting cat and mouse bidding. Yeah, very, very interesting. All the components of this game, they all mesh together really nicely, as I think I said before. Anyway, early stages here, no factories yet on the board, but we're likely to accelerate as they appear. Well, I messed up a NASA mission during the game. I attempted to get out here with a refinery to start sorting NASA out with all these claims that they had. And I got a rocket out to about here, coming around this way, and then realised that although it had enough fuel for the burns, it didn't then have enough fuel to land, because this was 4 size and it had very low thrust because of all the weight it was carrying. And yeah, that was just awful, and had to start again with a different engine, and that wasted huge amounts of time for NASA. And so the game has just finished, and NASA have just about built one factory. Bit disappointing there. The game finished with the construction of this purple factory out here. They were able to build some stuff there and ship some other stuff in, and then work out to this claim here, which is on Davida, and build that factory there. And so we've got purple with 2 factories, these 2 here. Orange, the Shimizu Corporation with 2 factories on Mars. The PRC with 1 on Mars and 1 on the Moon. And then NASA out here with a factory on whatever that says, Unitas, I think that says, and Vesta, and they've got claims here. So points then, haven't added this up then, but NASA have got 1 factory on an S class, so that's 5 points for NASA. Next, let's have a look at Red. Red have got a factory on a C class worth 4 and an S class worth 5. That's 9 points for them. So 5 for NASA, 9 for the Reds. Let's have a look at Orange. Orange have got 2 C-class factories. That's 4 each, 8 points. And then they've got first people to land on Mars, a crew on Mars and come back. So that's 11 points. And then Purple over here. Oh, I think I've done this in reverse order. I've got an M-class factory. That's worth 8, the only one on the board. They've got a C-class factory, that's worth 4, that's 15, sorry, 12. And they've also got a point up here for getting a crew onto a science site, so they've got 15 points. So 15 to the UN, 11 to Shimizu, 9 to the PRC, and 5 to NASA. Those are the final scores. Ah, man, this is such a good game. It's such a good game. I don't know what to say about it. I don't know what sort of category it's in either. It's in a class of its own, really. It's in a category of its own. There's something about slightly Euro-ish about it, with this sort of auction bidding thing here and this kind of point salad in here for all this stuff. And yet the basis, the chassis of the game is this incredible sort of time energy map of the solar system on which it's all based. So and you know, the physics of the thrust and mass, and yeah, it's so good. It's really good. There's elements of it that feel a bit Euro-ish, but overall it just feels like you're trying to problem solve your way around space using all this cool technology. It's just fantastic. I want to play another game of it straight away, but I'm not going to play the basic game again. I think I'm going to look at the next level up, which I think adds in some advanced rules and some more cards. And I'm not talking about colonizations particularly. I think there's just a more advanced version where you start adding in, well, firstly you start using these stats in here, the different mass number and the rad hardness instead of just the basic mass. And secondly, I think there's stuff like this where there are requirements for certain equipment. So this goes from mass 3 to mass 0, but it needs a reactor and a radiator, and so on. So I think I'm going to start looking at that as the next step in my high frontier development.